I want to thank, first of all, everyone at the Startup Festival, because I've been hearing about this for 2 or 3 years, and I can see why everyone loves coming here. Typically, I talk about cloud computing, big data, network security, fascinating topics that change the world like that. So today is a little bit different for me. And as we start to talk about the crooked path to success, one of the things we have to agree upon is that we all have a different definition of success. And I think the stories that we've heard this morning say that very well. And depending on your definition of success, you may or may not believe that I'm successful. I will tell you quite honestly, I am not the wealthiest person in this room. I am not the smartest person in this room. And I probably have not done the most to change the world. But according to my definition of success, I believe I am successful. And some of those criteria have I been able to take care of my family? Have I had fun doing what I love doing? Have I been able to make a difference, build businesses, impact people's lives, manage people and give them new opportunities, and be happy? So based on those things, I think that I have been successful. And as you look at your own path, take the time to stop and say, what does success look like for me? So I'm going to go through 10 learnings. She called me a professional zigzagger. Actually, I think Alistair coined that phrase. I didn't actually know that I had a title of professional zigzagger, but as you see my story, and this is just one story. There's millions of them. I love the fact we're hearing all these stories. In my 50 years on the planet, I've had some unique experiences that I want to share with you and the learnings I've had, so hopefully it can help you on your journey as you define what success looks like for you. So when I got out of school in the 80s, it was very clear what your expectation was. You were to get a job right out of college. You were not to ever go back to your parents' home. In fact, I think my parents moved my junior year in college to make sure that that didn't happen. And you started on that corporate ladder and you just moved up those rungs. And if you were really lucky, you maybe moved a couple rungs at a time. But it was a straight path. And back then, there were a lot of people working for the same company for 25, 30, 35, 40 years. And hopefully you worked for a company that gave you a pension at the end of that. And that was really the path that was laid in front of all of us. And then if you were a woman, there was a little bit different path that you were also told, which is, and to go up that ladder and be successful, you really need to act like a man. And so when I got out of college, I had 3 suits that I bought, some really nice starched Oxford shirts, and a complete set of silk bow ties. Did anyone else walk around in bow ties and shirts? I don't know if anyone else is 50 years old in this room, but I had an awesome set of bow ties. And we dressed like that every single day. And the one weird thing is we had really big shoulder pads in the 80s, and I don't know how that fit into looking like a man. I think it was, to make you look more muscular. But we had really bad hair and really bad shoulder pads. But the point was that you couldn't be successful unless you talked, acted, dressed, and were a female version of a man to be successful. So I did what every woman that wanted to be successful did, is I followed my father. And my father had worked in the automotive industry his entire career, and so that's what I knew. So I left college outside of Seattle, and I moved to Detroit, and got a job in automotive marketing and advertising. And I laugh when people always say, oh my God, you must love Mad Men. I lived Mad Men. I mean, it was, I'm not joking. This was the 80s. I don't know what happened in those 20 years. As far as I know, nothing. And I will also tell you that one of the things that I learned in growing up in the automotive industry, and she said this, is that I love muscle cars. The 66 Mustang is my favorite. But really anything from the 60s I love. But you learn to have lunch meetings with your clients and your scotch on the rocks. You learn to smoke a cigarette. You learn to swear. It was all part of that persona. And it's actually very hard to get rid of once you live that, and especially here when all the guys talking are swearing, all the F-bombs are flying, and I really can't do that right now based on my current position, so it's taking a lot of control for me not to join that little parade. But so I went to Detroit and had a great time and worked there for 3 years, and learned a lot. And what my first learning was, which a lot of you have probably learned, or if you haven't, you're learning it during these 2 or 3 days, is it's who you know. And that has not changed. Now, finding people you know or developing those relationships has become much, much easier. We've got LinkedIn, and you can find out, your 2 or 3 degrees of separation, and, who you know can be a much larger community. But at the end of the day, as it was then and for decades before that, and as it is now and in the future, who you know is very important. I got that job in Detroit because of a friend of my father's, and I was not ashamed to use it because it was a job or not a job. And so that has continued to be a very strong learning. So after 3 years in Detroit, I had a friend from college who was traveling in Asia. And I decided to quit my job, sell like the 5 things I had, because I was making a whopping $16,000 a year, and go to Asia. So I got on a plane from Seattle to Bangkok. And I was a typical American, meaning I had no idea where Bangkok was, meaning I had no world history, really. I mean, other than Vietnam War, which I actually didn't know was near Bangkok at the time. Funny, it turns out they're right next to each other. But I thought, this sounds like fun. I'm just gonna take a backpack and get on a plane and show up in Bangkok. So we were there for a few days, and then I got on another plane to Calcutta, India. I will tell you, if you go on a year walkabout and sell everything you have, Calcutta is not the place to start learning about international life. But I did. So, and I spent the next year traveling all over Asia. And it was the most awesome experience. And for many of you in this room that are Canadian or European or not American, this sounds perhaps like a normal thing. I will tell you, in the 80s, as an American woman, in my mid-20s, this was not a normal thing. And people thought I was absolutely insane. But my learning was sometimes to really move yourself forward and to figure out who you are, you just jump off that ladder completely. It's not even a zigzag, it's just a complete fall. But that year changed my life. And it changed my life because I ended up stopping in Taipei at the end, because I had no money, and we thought we'd teach English for a while. But instead of teaching English, I walked into the headquarters of Acer, which was one of the largest PC makers at the time. They did a lot of the OEM, ODM work for IBM and everybody else. And I just asked them if they maybe needed, an English writer or a marketing person, which of course panicked the young women at the front desk completely. And they sent down the one other white person in the entire building who told me, yes, actually, they did need some marketing help. And thus I started my career in tech in Taiwan as a 25-year-old American woman. And the next 10 years, in Taiwan and Hong Kong, I spent just looking for new opportunities, and things just seemed to happen, and I did things I'd always wanted to do. There was an English radio station, so I thought, I could do that. So I called them up and I said, hey, do you need someone to do like a business show or marketing for you? And they said, yeah, that sounds good. So I started working there, and then over time became a news anchor on this radio station that had 1 million listeners all over Asia. And then I started writing articles for different places, and I pitched Business Week and said, I think you really need a foreign correspondent in Taipei writing about the tech industry, because Taiwan is just this amazing place for tech. And they go, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. It wasn't that easy, but you get my drift. And then as I was writing, I got to know more and more people there, and McCann Erickson had this huge government project to help shift the brand of Taiwan in global markets. And it had a really creative name. It was called the Very Well Made in Taiwan campaign. But if you remember, it wasn't that long ago where, Taiwan was thought of as being umbrellas that broke, like we heard about yesterday. And they were trying to become the, global leader in semiconductor, which they are today. Taiwan Semiconductor, United Semiconductor, they've got huge foundries, and a whole bunch of other industries. And so I put together a plan for them to improve part of their program. They liked it, they hired me, and I started running this communications and event management and promotional program, training government ministers and CEOs how to go abroad and talk about how Taiwan had changed their quality and their brand. And so my learning about those 10 years was look for those open doors. And you've heard of this a lot from people, but it really is true. And it's funny because over my entire life, people have always said, well, Margaret, you're lucky, you've got options. And I've always thought that was the weirdest thing to say. It's like, well, I have options because I see them. And doors open for me every time I need one to open. But I think it's because I'm looking for them, I'm seeing them, I'm asking the universe, okay, show me what's next, and I'm taking the chance to walk through them. So my ladder has not been straight. It has been probably multiple ladders, but it has been an amazing journey, and I would not go back and take back going through one of those doors in 1 second. So when you see a door open or someone opens a door for you, take that chance, because the best thing you could do is maybe go through that, even if it takes you on a totally different journey. So then I was doing all this work on Very Well Made in Taiwan, and I realized there was this gap in the market there where these Taiwanese companies really needed more help going overseas. And then there was this other group of people, international businesses, that were coming to Taiwan because it was a huge growing economic power, and how to promote themselves locally. So I put together this entire business plan, and this was really before you could go on the internet easily and find multiple business plans that you could just copy and paste. I think I did the whole thing in like WordPerfect or something, including the spreadsheet of my projection model. It was very sad. But it was a business plan. It was the first one I'd ever done. And I took that to the Weber Group, which was the PR arm of McCann Erickson where I was working. And took it to them and said, I think this is great. I can be in the black from day one. This is how I'm going to do it. And they're like, yeah, okay, we're not giving you any money. If you can do it, you can open a branch office, be the managing director. So I said, okay, in my ignorance. And so I thought, I can do this. And so we put it together, and we found an office space. And we got this office space really cheap. And this company had gone out of business, and they had this small office in the World Trade Center Tower in Taipei. And they had left everything. And so desks, everything, computers, you name it. And so my small team and I went in there, and I'm like, we should just move in here. And they're like, no, this is horrible feng shui, right? This company failed. We will fail. And this was pretty serious stuff. And so I'm like, okay, but this is the only way we can afford to have an office, is if we take this office, because we have no money. And so we got a feng shui master to come in, and he walked around the office. I believe this stuff, so you shouldn't laugh. It's real. And I was very important, because I was going to be the Laoban, the boss. And so my birthday and my elements, which are wood, by the way, and water also is very important to me. And so all this stuff. And so we painted the walls a certain color. We had to knock a wall out. We moved the desks around. And then the last thing was, where's my office going to be? And of course, I assumed it was going to be the really nice office with the windows that was the boss's office, right? And he walks in there and goes, oh, no. You can't sit here. A man needs to sit here. I'm like, yeah, I bet it does. And so, anyway, I'm just joking. And so I had 2 male employees, and so they got this gorgeous office that they shared, which they thought was just rocking. They were both like 22-year-old AEs in this PR agency. And we walked through the entire small office, and then this storeroom kind of closet area. He walked and he goes, oh, the energy is very good for you here. So as we grew, and I ended up having almost 15 employees who all had window views outside the World Trade Center of Taipei, and then my office was in the back storage room. But I have to give him credit, because we were in the black from day one. We grew very strong. I never had to ask for another dollar from headquarters, and that office is still there today. And in fact, both of those male AEs, I think they got the best deal. One is running that office. He was an electrical engineer who I taught to do marketing, which is not rocket science, and he knew the tech field. And the other one runs an office in Shanghai. And so to me, that was like the greatest achievement at all. And the thing I learned about this, and someone earlier said, listen to your critics. And while I agree with that, I think when you're starting a business, you have to surround yourself with people who believe in you and support you. And I will tell you, the weirdest thing for me was I would go to the States, and I would tell people what I'm doing. They're like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to start this company in Taipei. And they'd look at me, they go, well, what makes you think you're qualified to do that? Or, well, why do you think you're going to be successful? Have you noticed that you're a white woman and you just said you're going to start a company in Taipei? Isn't that a sexist society? Blah, blah. I mean, I cannot tell you the comments I got from people, family, friends in my home country. I'd go back to Taipei, and I'd be talking to just random people. They go, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm starting this company. Do you need money? And they'd say, what kind of company is it? And I'd say, oh, it's this. Oh, my mom owns a print shop down the way. My cousin's in advertising. Do you have good connections over here? It was so obvious to them. It didn't matter that I was, a 30-year-old American woman opening this business in Taipei. That was what you did. It's an entrepreneurial culture. So that part was obvious. It wasn't that I was starting a company that was weird. They just wanted to know, what kind of company was it? Did I need money or connections? And the great thing about doing that for the first time in Taiwan was I learned that starting a company, and even if it failed, it didn't matter. That just meant that was the wrong company or that was the wrong product. And so kind of coming of age in my professional life and personal life in an environment that just told you if something happened that didn't work out, that just meant there was something not right about that. That's not that something's wrong with you. It doesn't mean you can't succeed as an entrepreneur. It just means you need to do it differently next time. And, you know, as we look at ourselves in North America, we need to be very careful what we tell people. And I find myself catching myself when I meet someone like a 23-year-old that says, oh, I'm starting a company, yeah, we're gonna be millionaires in like 2 years. And my first thing is like, you're full of, you know, there's no way. You're 23 years old, or you're 17, or you didn't go to college. I stop myself because I don't know that. They might be the next rocket scientist or just have a great idea, and maybe I should listen, and maybe I should think about investing in that, or at least supporting them and connecting them to people I know. So, random clapping from the back, thank you. So then I was ready to go back home to America. I decided after 10 years it was time. And so then I thought, well, what do I do? How do I, you know, I've done all these things. I'm almost becoming irrelevant back in the States. So I thought, I know, I'll find a company in Seattle that has global operations, and they can't find anyone that's not clueless in Seattle about the world. And so I pitched companies in Seattle that I knew were trying to globalize, like Starbucks, Amazon, Boeing. And I thought, you know, one of those has got to need someone to do this stuff. So Amazon, turns out, had been looking for an international PR director to launch all their sites, because this was 1999. And so I got a job with Amazon, and I spent the next 2 worlds going around the world every month and launched Amazon DE and FR and COJP and also .ca. I actually got Amazon to sponsor the first novel award in Canada, which I was very proud of because we sponsored a lot of new novelists here. And so that was awesome. And what I learned from that is you can control your own destiny. And this is true whether you're looking to work for a company or your own. I created what I thought was going to be a niche that I could fill that no one else could fill. I'm sure there were other people that could have done that job, but it worked. And I didn't wait for someone to come find me or just take a job that just worked for whatever because it was there. I actually thought, what is it I want to do next that keeps me involved in the world but lets me live in Seattle? So then 2002 hit, and I just put this up here in case you guys weren't around in 2002 and remember that really fun stock market experience, which is one thing I'm really bad at. Don't ever ask me when to go to a company based on their stock price because I suck at it. Really bad. Although this latest company, I think my timing is good now. But anyway, so 2002, Amazon decided to close their international division. There were several of us they'd hired in that. And so I had 2 months to kind of look for something new internally or externally. So I was out networking my little butt off in 2002, and those voices came out again where everyone was saying, you know, this is the worst economic downturn that we can remember. You won't find a job. There's no jobs out there. Have you noticed how many unemployed people there are in Seattle and Silicon Valley? Everyone's looking for work. You've done marketing. Those are the first thing people lay off. You are not going to find a job. So, like I said before, surround yourself with people that support you, and I just never stopped believing I was going to land on my feet. And then I also, as I said, network, network, network. So I've got a 6A there. And I tell my kids and everyone I mentor about this, it's like networking cannot be underestimated. I met with anyone that I could buy coffee, take to lunch, that would listen to me for 10 seconds, and when they would introduce me to 2 people, I went and met with those people. And at the end of 2 months, I had 2 job offers and almost a third one, and I went to work in network security for a mid-stage startup that had a really cool SSL VPN product. And if you don't think SSL VPN is sexy, then you're wrong. They are. They're incredibly sexy, and they're changing the world. It's kind of... Now they're just like a feature in a broader remote access. But I found out I loved network security. I still to this day have dreams about the OSI stack. I don't like to admit that to very many people, but I do. I actually had to create a cloud stack recently just so I could stop dreaming about the OSI stack. But I found out I really liked this business, and I was able to, take everything I'd learned and add it to this group. So my learning there was don't be afraid to just leap into something totally different, especially if you love learning new things, which I'm assuming all of you do. So a lot of times we think, oh, I can't do that, I don't know network security. Or when you're interviewing for something, they go, well, do you know network security? And you immediately go, oh, no, crap. In fact, someone was giving a speech at an event I was at not long ago, and they were saying, for you women in this room, is that the biggest difference between men and women when they're working is a man will look at a new job and will look at all the qualifications. And let's say there's 10 things you have to do, and he'll have 6 of them, and he'll like, yeah, I can do those. I got 6 out of the 10. The woman will look at that same 10 things, and she can do 6 of them, and she's like, oh, shit, I can only do 6. I'll never get that job. So just think about that, whether you're, that I can do it or I can't do it, you can do it if you're a fast learner and you can figure it out. So turns out, I had become then a SSL VPN expert in the market, and Microsoft was about to acquire this small SSL VPN in Israel, and they needed somebody to run their kind of marketing communications. So went to Microsoft, and while I was there, the cool thing was there was an opportunity to also run product management. And so I used this to update my brand a little bit and move to a very technical position, which I had never done, and ended up running product management for 2 network security products. Yes, Microsoft has network security. It's not an oxymoron. Just get over it now. And ended up spending a lot of time in Israel with an engineering team there that I was managing, which was a very different experience culturally. You talk about F-bombs. If you ever have to work in Israel, just warm up, because you'll be swearing a lot. And it was awesome. Loved Israel. Best red wine I've ever had in my life, which is another joke that I don't have time to tell, but a great experience. So, and I was also really involved in all the work Microsoft was doing with network access protection. They did stuff with Cisco. It was this really complicated framework. Not as sexy, but still meant a lot, keeping bad things out of your network in a simple way. And so one of the guys at Microsoft had left and gone to a VC, and he calls me up and he goes, hey, come run marketing at this really cool startup that's leveraging NAP, because you're the only person that knows how to talk about it. And I said, yeah, cool. And so my learning there was, I couldn't get up the ladder at Microsoft. It would have taken me, a few years to become VP there. So I went to the startup and became VP of marketing. And the other thing I learned at this that, and for everyone in companies, this is really important, is that once you have a title, people don't necessarily know that you're good or bad at that title. I've been amazed working in startups how I will be with a CEO who actually sucks, but they're a CEO in the market's mind. And so the next job they get is CEO of another company. And I look at that and I go, what the? But then I realized, oh wait, I can use this. I'm now a VP of marketing. I'm now an executive of a company. And it took me a while to figure this out, where I just didn't think, oh, I'm just faking it. Like I don't really know what I'm doing. It was just luck. Or it's at a startup, it's not at a real company. But nobody else knows that, right? That's just your own, like you're the 12-year-old at the adult table that we all have. Thank you. I was like, tell me I'm not the only person that still feels that way. So I ladder leaped. And then that startup completely imploded, but it didn't matter because now I was a VP of marketing in the market. And I went looking for a new job, again in 2008, which was the second worst economic downturn in all of tech history, and went into cloud computing. Just got lucky. I'll just say it right there. I had no idea where the cloud was going. I didn't know how to talk about it. And then over the next 5 years, worked for 2 startups in the cloud computing space and started building my brand as a cloud expert. And the thing I learned through all those things is I've been at 4 startups, 2 that have been acquired, 2 that have failed miserably. And it didn't matter because I've taken amazing things from both of those. In fact, I've probably learned more about management and strategy of the ones that failed than the ones that succeeded. So in wrapping up, the most powerful thing I did recently was I answered my cell phone on a really bad day. The startup I was in was like breaking apart, and it was all due to the founders. For those of you that are doing founders, 2 of you, we got to the point where the founders could not stop trying to kill each other, so somehow having strategy and product delivery became kind of an issue. When you're spending your whole time as another executive trying to keep them from just, not killing each other, and whatever one would say, the other one would disagree, whether it was right or wrong. So had a really bad day with that, went and worked out, came out of the gym, phone rang, and I answered it. It said unknown. I never answered. Does anyone answer unknown? I hate that because it's always like a solicitor or something. One guy answers. He's like, yeah, I do all the time, man. I get dates. But I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. So I answered his phone. In this case, it turned out to be this guy from HP, an executive recruiter, who said in a Southern accent, I Googled you. Okay. But it turns out they were looking for a VP of marketing, product marketing, to run this new little startup within HP to do cloud services, public cloud. So about 4 months ago, I joined HP. like at Microsoft, it's kind of this weird startup environment within a big company. And what I've learned is that one of my brands now is someone who is a hard-working, startup mentality, entrepreneur, executive that knows how to navigate and deal with a lot of corporate bureaucracy. So I can go both sides of the coin, I guess, which I didn't know that was actually a talent, but it turns out a lot of people can't do that. Some are really good in startups or really good in big companies, but a lot of companies now need both, right? Because big companies don't have the time for people just kind of coasting around. They've got to move a lot faster. So I just thought I'd throw this in because along this zigzagging path, you now have seen how my career in life has gone over. I also am married and have 5 children. And there's actually 7 children there because we have 2 significant others. So that's, thank you. I don't know if the men were clapping because I birthed or I don't know what that was. You can do it. But no, I love my kids. So I'm working till I die because I have this family over here that is very large. We joke about that, but no, they're great. So final learning. And if you take nothing else away, and this kind of goes along with what Jeff and Chris and other people have said, and I tell my children this all the time, is that let your light shine. And I used to think this was something I just had to mentor women about. But I've learned that this is something across cultures. I don't care what your cultural background is. I don't care what country you're from. I don't care what religion you are. Somehow in society, when we're little kids, we can just be whatever. But as we grow up, we're told, don't laugh so loud. Don't talk so loud. You're too fat. You're too tall. Right? You're pushing too much. You work so hard. Why do you work too hard? I mean, I can tell you I've heard everything, and I'm sure all of you have. Why do you think you can do that? Why do you need to be an entrepreneur? Why do you think you need to do good? Why do you think you can change the world? So not only don't listen to those voices, embrace your light, shine your light, and not only shine it for yourself, your responsibility is to shine that light on others and for others. And so giving back, we've heard about, I truly believe that. And it's taken me almost 50 years to really be able to stand here and say, I am okay with shining my light, with telling my story, not because I'm better or smarter or richer, just because I have experience that I think I can share, and I want to let you know it's okay. Go frickin' do it, because you can. And don't let anybody stop you, and don't let anyone snuff out your light. So, thank you.